Welcome back to Podcast powered by SmartBot. I'm your host Manza, and today we are diving into the fascinating world of generative AI and its implications for business. With us today, we have a distinguished guest, Casey Ramakrishna, co-founder at Vantage Circle. Thank you for being here. Let's jump right into our discussion. Ramakrishna, some experts have likened the emergence of ChatGPT and similar technologies to the iPhone movement for AI. What's your take on this? Is generative AI really the turning point for the field?
Question, I'd like to give a bit of background. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the platform. It's a pleasure to talk on these topics because this is something very close to my heart. I've been wanting to do ML and AI for a very, very long time. And it's only in the last 8-10 years that the hardware has caught up. The mathematics and the science itself, there were a fair amount of research happening over the last 30 years or 40 years in places like MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, and all of these places. But we did not have the processing power required to really bring out practical applications of this AI in such a wide application set. And with the recent emergence of graphics cards, high-powered CPUs, fast storage, fast network, emergence of technologies in data science. So a lot of these technologies came together, to make AI commonly applicable. And to the specific point of your question, is this the iPhone moment? Yes. So the parable here is for iPhone to happen, a lot of other technologies had to come into place. You had to have the camera technology, you need to have display technology, you needed to have small batteries, you needed to have high bandwidth, for your phone to the tower. You needed to have low powered chips. You needed to have, low power consumption storage. So all of these technologies had to come together for iPhone to be possible. Of course, it is Steve Jobs' genius which sort of put all of that together. And not only did he make it together, his genius also was the fact that he made it affordable. Telecom providers to make it kind of an EMI kind of an approach rather than, you put all that money up front, right? So there is a lot of development which happened for iPhone. And yes, you are right. I think ChatGPT is an iPhone movement, and it was enabled because of all of these developments in other technologies. So yes, I think it is there, and everybody knew AI will change the world. We never knew when, and I think today is the time. So I would say science fiction is now. It's not in the future. It is now. That's how I.
There's a lot of buzz around generative AI right now. Do you think we are at the peak of hype cycle or is there more to come? What trends do you foresee in the near future?
So I see a phenomenal amount of application for AI in general, right? So I would see a scenario where most of our mundane daily tasks are completely automated, right? Not just in terms of our office work, even like for example self-driving cars, right? So tomorrow morning you could have self-driven robots which are going to do the cleaning for you. So all your household stuff is done by somebody else. You could have 100% automation of agriculture, right? And once you have 100% automation of agriculture, then a lot of people. So a big chunk of what defines us as humans is that we have to work to feed ourselves. So if that becomes free, what is how are we going to evolve if our survival is not at stake, right? So I think AI is going to make inroads in every single aspect of our life, including making our survival pretty much guaranteed. Whether you work or not or whatever, at least the technology will be developed enough to feed everybody on Earth. Okay, now what do we do? So many people are employed in agriculture or employed in producing so many things. If all of that, the need for all of that is taken away, right? Then what is it that I'm going to do in the morning? I don't know. So when you're looking at AI in that aspect, generative AI is only one small part of it. Generative AI is a cool, it looks good, and it's fascinating. But I think generative AI is only a small part of the whole AI and ML landscape. And from a generative AI landscape, I can obviously, the applications are already out in the market, like from legal advice to looking at history, to creating jokes, to creating artwork, to impersonating people, to creating fake personalities, for customer support or for, a lot of fraud which happens, which can happen because of generative AI. So generative AI is fantastic, but it's not the only part of AI. It's the one which looks cool, but there are other stuff, which done. So if you look at the use cases of generative AI, which I have seen myself, there are one or two things. So the first thing is, that it is cross-functional. It's a cross-functional expert to a certain sense. So if I want to develop a product, which is most of the time, that's what I end up doing. We develop product. So for developing a product, I need expert inputs on various technologies. So just like to put together an iPhone, you needed to have camera technology, you needed to have battery, and you need to have microprocessor technology. So sometimes when you're creating a product, you need inputs from all of these different fields. And in the past, you needed to have all of these engineers sitting around a table, okay, for you to do brainstorming, right? So you would have a ton of these brainstorming sessions because I would ask for a certain feature, and that particular expert would say, hey, you know what, that's not going to be possible. Okay. But then I will have to dig back into him and say, hey, is this possible? Is this possible? Is this possible in this particular context? Right? So I needed to be having these 10 engineers sitting around a table or 4 or 5 experts sitting around a table, and it would be a brainstorming session which lasts a couple of days, right? Now, all of that I can ask just one generative AI. So recently I tested it out with ChatGPT for one particular automation that I was trying to do. And it was cross-domain. I needed to understand the protocols of that particular domain. I needed to understand the legal guidelines in that domain. I needed to understand, the ethics, and then I wanted to put the technologies, 4 or 5 technologies together to bring out that solution. And as I was starting to work with the generative AI, I could see that it was definitely answering a lot of my questions, right? To at least a certain level that enabled me to go forward. It doesn't replace the need for experts because generative AI always hits a wall. After 2 or 3 questions, it hits a wall. It doesn't know enough. Or I need to know enough to ask the right questions. So it could either be a limitation of the generative AI that it doesn't know. Sometimes it may be that I don't know how to ask the right question, and which is where you hear about prompt engineering and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely democratizes creation, definitely democratizes information more than internet. I could ask a very specific legal query, and generative AI will give you a fairly decent answer. For a more deeper understanding, you still need to go to a lawyer, right? But the generative AI will at least go, if 100 is your perfect answer, the generative AI can take you till 20 or 30 at least, right? So there's a lot of groundwork you can do before you go talk to an expert. And as generative AI becomes better and better and more niche, specific to a particular field, I think, you can get to like a 60% of the answer before you have to talk to a human being and get the full answer. So I think generative AI is incredibly important for creative people, and product managers and people who are creating the next set of solutions for the world.
Well, I think you have covered the next segment of question, but still, I would like to put it across. Generative AI is being explored across industries, and in your opinion, what are the most promising use cases generative AI in the enterprise context?
So most promising, you could look at it in terms of impact, or you can look at it in terms of low-hanging fruit, right? So from a low-hanging fruit perspective, marketing and sales comes into picture and customer support comes into picture, which has been happening all over the place, right? Now, if you're looking at impact, generative AI, like I said, creative people, okay, people who are product managers. Let us say I'm an electronics engineer and I'm working on a solution which requires not just electronics know-how, you also need mechanical know-how, and you need to know maybe aerospace know-how, and you need to have a civil engineering know-how. Now, no single person is going to have all of these, all of this knowledge. And that is where I think generative AI will start becoming more and more cross-domain, cross-functional kind of oracle. Right? To give you answers across multiple domains. To a fairly reasonable extent, you can make one person can make significant progress before you need to bring in the rest of the experts. So I think product managers, engineers, medical field, pharmacists. So today's day of hyper specialization of doctors, you know, sometimes, some particular symptom may not be related to one particular organ of the body. It may be because of a complex interplay between three or four organs. So those are the kind of things which I think AI in general and generative AI will be able to give insights to help the doctors make the right diagnosis. Generative AI will still not make the diagnosis, or we can't rely on it. But I think physicians, surgeons, research people, they will get a lot of input from other fields, which today is cumbersome to get. That is how I would characterize.
I see that you've been actively involved in integrating generative AI into your services. Can you share an example of how it's impacted or could impact your clients' operations?
So in our field, we're just scratching the surface. We are using a very common and general use case of generative AI. So one of the things that we do is on our platform, employees can appreciate each other, right? So if you helped me, like Mansa helped me achieve a particular task in my project, or they gave me some mentorship. So I can type out appreciation saying that, hi Mansa, thank you for mentoring me in this particular topic. And it was not easy for me. And your mentoring helped me achieve this particular objective and helped in my career. So our generative AI helps you polish this message, because this is something which goes into the company bulletin board. And there is a wall of these messages for organizations in Vantage Circle. Sorry, I don't know if I gave you a context of Vantage Circle. So Vantage Circle is one of India's largest employee rewards and recognition platform. And we are also growing very, very fast in the US and globally. And we have very, very marquee customers, like Infosys, Wipro, Capgemini, and a lot of companies that use our product. And so one of the big use cases of our product, apart from rewards and rewards catalog, is that we enable this kind of a social setting for the employees of large corporates. So you can appreciate your colleagues, you can give them kudos. Managers can encourage their colleagues to, or their team members, in a certain set direction. And in those places, a lot of that communication is the key. So when people type out messages, our generative AI sort of understands what they're trying to convey, and see if we can, give them suggestions on how to convey it better. So that is where we use generative AI to improve the message which the employees try to communicate to each other. And when you're looking at thousands of messages per day, it's quite useful to the employees, because it's not just the food you eat, it is also how it is presented. So it's not just the appreciation, but it's also how you are presenting that appreciation. So generative AI helps in presenting that appreciation. So that's where we use generative.
And we come to the last segment of our conversation today, which is ethical considerations. As we move forward with AI integration, ethical concerns become paramount. How do you approach ethical considerations, particularly when dealing with sensitive enterprise data?
That's a philosophical question. I'm not as much a philosopher as an engineer, but ethics, there's like a huge field of ethics. Right from the most common example which we know, it's a train going down a track, and on one track, there is 5 people walking who are not aware of the danger, and there is a side track, which has just one person. So would you let the train go in that direction, or will you change the direction? Right? So that's just one aspect of ethics. And in this case, AI is a train. AI and ML is the train which is bearing down on humanity. So ethics is going to be super critical in how we use it. And it's also going to be extremely difficult. because a lot of our ethical frameworks come from our culture and come from religion to some extent, right? So we have these constitutions which try to remove the basis of your ethical and moral questions from religion and culture, and they try to make it culture agnostic or religion agnostic. And there will be similar debates for ethics of AI. The most common thing which we take for granted, which is equality of the genders, right? But not every country in the world believes in equality of religion. Not every country in the world has consensus on abortion rights, for example, right? So a lot of these questions apply equally to ML and AI. We ourselves haven't been able to solve these or at least come to a consensus. These are still evolving. So I think it'll be the same with machine learning and AI. It will keep evolving. We will have to, and that I think will hopefully a lot of human beings are freed up from their mundane work so that human beings can actually debate on these ethics and make sure that these ethics are implemented in ML. So that is how I would look at it. I think that's going to be the most challenging part of AI and ML because the technology parts, the mathematics, all of those things are, they can be done pretty easily. They say it either works or it doesn't work. But ethics is not like that. Ethics is very, very subjective. So I think there's going to be a lot of debate and a lot of back and forth and AI, and then it'll never be solved. It'll just keep going. We'll just keep making progress in steps. That's how I would characterize Simi.
Casey Ramakrishna, thank you for sharing your insights on the future of generative AI and its impact on businesses. It's been truly a thought provoking conversation.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Now, as much as I would like to do things, you also definitely need to think about how this affects other people. And talking like this helps to crystallize your thoughts and to sort of structure your thoughts. These thoughts are in my mind, but I never put it in a structure. And thanks for asking the questions, which helped me sort of structure the thoughts and share my views with your platform and the world.
Thank you once again. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of podcast. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions at the intersection of technology and business. Until next time.